Hey y'all, glad to get to send this video out to you today. I hope that your first week of group was a blessing to you, but even if it was a struggle, either way, wanted to bring you what I hope is an encouraging word this morning out of John chapter 10. Here's what Jesus says in verse 3 and verse 5. He says, "The gatekeeper opens the gate for the shepherd, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize the stranger's voice." I love this because it's the picture of the fact that Jesus leads you and I by name. He knows your name. He knows every detail about you, and he loves you. He leads you by name. Verse 3 says that Jesus calls us out by name and leads us out of the pen into life, into the world around us, into what he's called us to do, but he leads us by name. And then verse 5 reminds us that the sheep follow the shepherd because they know his voice, and they will not follow the voice of the enemy. Remember, we talked about that last week, because they don't recognize that voice. I want to maybe challenge you this morning, hopefully encourage you. What voice are you listening to? Because Jesus is calling you by name. He's leading you to where you need to go, but it takes effort. It takes time to learn to recognize the Father's voice. You know, back in the day before caller ID, when we all had house phones. Yes, I am old enough to have had a house phone. And I remember the days where you would pick up the phone because it was ringing. You had no clue who was on the other end. And you'd say, "Hello, this is the Williams house." And then sometimes it'd be a telemarketer or somebody. They'd introduce themselves. But if it was somebody that knew us, they'd just answer and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And in that moment, you had to discern, who is this that's calling, just by their voice. Now, if it was a good friend, a family member, right, you could recognize their voice because you've been around them. But sometimes it's difficult to recognize voices. We get better at recognizing the Father's voice by spending more time around him. It's our responsibility to learn his voice, to chase after him, to listen for what he's saying. And there are other voices around us. You know, your time spent in watching TV or watching DVDs or playing with your kids or going to the bar or watching the football game or looking at pornography, all these other things that you could be doing, good or bad, they all speak different voices into your life. The most important voice to learn, though, is the voice of the shepherd. Let him lead you by name today. Let him call you out. And if you don't know what his voice sounds like, take some time after this video and begin journaling. Listen, pray, cry out to God. Let me hear your voice. Let me know what you sound like. Let me know how to follow you. And he's faithful to answer those prayers. Let me pray for you. Father, I ask that you bless each of these group hosts. Lord, let them learn more clearly to know what your voice sounds like. Father, let us never be distracted or swayed by other voices. But Lord, let us hear you speaking clearly and go after all that you have for us. Father, bless these group hosts today. Lord, let them walk in your peace. Let them hear you calling them by name. And let them chase after your voice. Amen. Have a great week, y'all.